Happy Election Day, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. That's right. Of course, you probably already knew that unless you just turned on the radio just now. But yeah, hey, it's finally here, Election Day. In fact, we're almost done with Election Day. By the time your old buddy Parker comes on, polls close in less than 5 hours across the great state of Texas. So now let's start looking at what happens after polls close. Connor Vassel's going to help me out with a couple of questions that are still lingering. Number one, how long do you think it'll be before we know the results, Connor?
Yes, sir. So definitely. Right now, it varies. It's depending per state. We see how in Arizona, the commissioners, they're saying, oh, well, it could take a couple of days. Meanwhile, you have other states, for example, Florida, which has a much larger population. They can do it in the night. So in a perfect world, we'll know as soon as possible. But considering how overtly complicated this bureaucracy is, it might be, I'd say, a day.
See, that's absolute trash that non-swing states can count their votes all in one day, but it just so happens that this handful of swing states are the only ones that can't figure it out within a 12 to 24-hour period. That's too much of a coincidence for me, Connor.
Yeah, what are you talking about? You sound like a conspiracy theorist. Right. Please don't do that.
Thank you, sir. The other big question that, now that as soon as the ballots are cast and the polls close, we have to look at the fun specter of, will there be politically motivated riots if Kamala wins or if Trump wins? And when people say that, I know what they're really saying. Will there be politically motivated violence if Trump wins? Because if Kamala wins, there won't be. People unscrew all the plywood from their storefronts. But do you think there will be riots, Connor?
I think there will be very stupid people online saying very stupid things. Obviously, no one wants violence. Depending on how things go. I mean, we see in these past few years alone, riots, protests, peaceful protests as well. So if Trump wins, there will definitely be, at the very least, peaceful protests. If Kamala wins, the right doesn't protest like the left does. So that won't really necessarily be an issue. But I would just recommend everyone to steer clear, keep their leveled heads. Whatever happens is going to happen. We don't have any direct control over it. It's just the election system at play. And just wait and see and pray.
Well, look, I don't necessarily mean that there's going to be widespread violence, but when I say riots, I think back to 2016 when Trump won the first time. When I was walking after the 2 days after the election, I was walking to lunch, and on the side of a building it said "Die Whites Die, F Trump," and clearly this was from the people who had had a little extracurricular activities the night of and the night after the 2016 election. Are we going to see hate like that?
Well, considering the past few months, we've been told that Orange Man is literally Hitler, and this is going to be the death of our democracy and Western civilization as we know it. There will definitely be certain bad actors out there trying to instigate hate or some sort of reaction. There will definitely be something like that, I'm sure.
And if y'all want to see that, I actually shared that picture out that I took myself on 2016. It's on the WBAP Twitter feed, X feed, whatever you want to call it. Are you watching the election coverage in a party setting tonight? Are you going to an event?
You know what? I'm thinking I might go to bed early. I have enough stress this election.
Right. It's not like we're going to know the answer anyway.
Exactly. I'm going to wake up and we're still not going to know. So, hey, I'm not going to be missing anything.
Well, it's funny how emotionally my wife gets involved on election day because she's not politically agnostic, but she doesn't wade around in it knee deep like you and I do, Connor, for our jobs and whatnot. So she's kind of, paying attention and whatnot during the election cycle. But election night, she walks through the living room every 20 minutes or so and goes, how's it going? How's it going? Are we winning? Are we losing? What are they saying? So it's fun to see even the casual observer, feel the excitement of an election night.
Definitely. I mean, I still remember back in 2020, even during the debates, I would pace around the living room and scream at the screen for whatever reason. But there's certainly that energy, definitely, including now. But I think a lot of people are starting to realize that this will be a consequential election. I would argue the most consequential we've had in quite a while. So they're all feeling that in the air.
You want to go ahead and say who you think's going to win?
I don't want to jinx it, man. I don't know anymore.
Right? It's so close. I could see it going either way. As long as they don't stop counting the votes, like at 2:00, they're like, boy, we sure are tired. We better just close down and pick this up in the morning. Something that's never happened in American history. As long as they don't do something like that, I'll be happy accepting the results either way. What about you, Connor?
Well, as long as we don't have an influx of 3 a.m. voters like we did last time, I think, it'll be a little more transparent at the very least. But I actually have a theory I wanna put out. So we all know how polls are very faulty, right? There's a margin of error. We saw it in 2016. Everyone was flabbergasted. No one expected that, right? Hillary Clinton went from, a 92% chance of winning to 0. So with that being said, I mean, we all see these polls, right? We're very just demoralized. We're tired of seeing, it's so close, 60-40, 55-40, whatever it is. What if they are just pushing the polls they want to show in the sense that, okay, Kamala is so close to Trump, it's a super competitive race. Maybe it's not. Or maybe she wins and it turns out that we are in our own little echo chamber and then they'll show us what we need to know. But, whatever happens is going to happen. We on the ground, us little people, we don't really have much control over one way or the other. So there's no rhyme or reason to get stressed or worked up about it. Now, in terms of the consequences of policy, we can talk about that on a later show, on a later date. But right now, I would just recommend everyone if you haven't voted already, get online, check your local rules when your polls close, encourage family members, friends to vote, do it easily, do it transparently, do it well, and that's all we can do at this point.
Connor Vasile, how do they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter /X at Connor_Vasile. That's B's and Victor. You can also find my books on Amazon, The State Knows Best, and I'm Joe Biden.
Fantastic. There he is again, Connor Vasile. Thank you very much for keeping track of this election through the whole cycle. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, sir.
All right, coming up next, same question I asked Connor, I'm asking you now. Law enforcement's on alert. Will there be riots if Trump wins? And by riots, protests in the street, people blocking highways, people blocking entrances to an airport, people spray painting, throwing bricks through windows. It doesn't have to be like mass murder and, blood in the streets. But will there be riots if Trump wins? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. You'll hear my theory coming up next on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, happy election day. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, the question is, will there be riots if Trump wins? Polls close here in Texas at 7 p.m. We should probably know the way our state goes before we go to sleep. They'll probably call that. We're going to probably be on the, the normal red state side, and no one's really paying much attention to us on a night like this, even though we're big and we got 40 just juicy, delicious electoral votes. All eyes are going to be on just like 7 swing states, 7, maybe 10 of these states that could possibly flip. We already have Florida saying, yeah, before you go to bed, you'll know our results too. And that's so weird because they have like 30 million people and Arizona has 6 million people, and Arizona can't count all their ballots in one night. How does that make sense? It doesn't. Exactly. It doesn't. So 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227, because law enforcement is on alert. You may have seen these headlines floating through your social media feeds, and when you click through, the reporting on it's fairly comical. Reporting on is well, police got to be on lookout in case there's some angry people for the election results. It's no. It's only one side you have to worry about. No one is boarding up the windows in their downtown storefront right now because they're worried about a Kamala Harris victory. You remember the reports in 2020? Because after, you remember 2020 Summer of Love, all the George Floyd Love Fest that was going on. I mean, this was basically downtown of about 24 major metropolitan areas for months on end. And so they were so used to rioting. They'd gotten so good at it. It was almost like, they had been to football practice 2 days for a month or so, getting ready for the season. And so, you had these seasoned rioters looking at the specter of the election results in November. And the reports were, you saw on TV, people downtown, they're drilling in plywood over their windows. And then on election night, when it looked like it was going to be stolen for Team Biden there. They stopped the votes, and then when they turned it back on, they found all these votes for Biden. What a coincidence. You could roll down your window in your car and you could just hear them undrilling the screws from all the plywood in the storefronts downtown because Joe Biden was winning. I mean, you could hear it, right? So the reporting on this is comical in the fact that they try and be even, like there's anger on both sides. No, there's not. Because your entire life, I'm talking to you, there's no such thing as a right-wing riot. Nothing burns. Remember when the Tea Party, that's the closest thing we've had to like a massive protest movement. Did anything ever magically catch fire? Was there a dumpster that just spontaneously combusted? Anyone burn a police precinct? Anyone loot a Foot Locker? No. I covered some Tea Party rallies. There was never a pedestrian getting knocked on the ground, getting kicked in the head like you saw here in downtown Dallas during the BLM riots. Summer of love, baby. Of all the gatherings and public rallies that right-wingers have had, there hadn't been 5 dart police shot from a parking garage. That's weird. That only happens, it seems like this only happens in one direction. No security guard at a pawn shop is murdered by a BLM looter, or I should say a Tea Party looter. Like, what was the guy's name? David Dorn Ferguson. But it's just not limited to politically motivated riots. We're talking about violence in general. One of the reasons you knew Juicy Smoulier was lying is because it would have been the first time that you saw a mugging by a white guy in a MAGA hat. It just had never happened before. I mean, I guess theoretically it's possible, but that's not where the violence comes from. The violence doesn't come from the Trump voter. The violence doesn't come from Team Red. When you go to prisons, what's the majority constituency in there? Are they Trump voters? I'm sure some of them are, but overwhelmingly, those come from Democrat constituencies, right? Think about every time you've seen on the news when someone's spraying bullets into a birthday party and, these drive-bys. The drive-bys, the guy pulling the trigger, is that ever a Trump voter? Is it? Is it some, 71-year-old Vietnam vet has a grudge? When you see, one of these terror attacks, is that ever, a real ticked-off Presbyterian? It's never a Trump constituency. It's never a Team Red constituency. The violence you see on TV, the violence you've seen in your life, the violence you've seen from these politically motivated riots. Just think about it. Whenever you do see the drive-bys or the horrible violence, how often does it happen in hyper-red neighborhoods versus hyper-blue neighborhoods? Just a coincidence? 800-288-9227. If you're concerned about there being politically motivated riots, you're not necessarily wrong. But it's only going to happen if Trump wins, right? 800-288-9227. This is Ruth in Corsicana. You're next up on WBAP. Your thoughts on Election Day?
Yes, I do believe there's going to be some rioting in the bigger cities. I'm not really worried. I live in a rural community. I live very far away from any big city. So, I'm not really worried about it in my community. I do have children that live in bigger cities. I have a daughter that lives in Wisconsin, and it worries me for her and her family.
Yeah, this is one of the things I liked about the divide between small town America and big city America. These riots where people are throwing a brick through the shoe store window and running out with big boxes of throwback Jordans, that doesn't happen in small towns. There's never a riot in a small town. In the history of Corsicana, I'm sure maybe sometimes someone's thrown a brick through a window or looted something.
I want to say there were some riots. I want to say it was back in the 90s, but nothing comes to mind in the last, I'm going to say 25 years that I've lived there.
Well, for my entire life, riots have only been something I see on TV. I haven't even been close to one. The closest I've been to one is when I lived in New Orleans for a little while, and they threw a big hissy fit after the election, and they were spray painting "White people suck" or "Die Whites die," and it's a good time.
I can say the only time I worried about riots is I had to go to San Antonio for my daughter's bachelorette party, and I had to drive through Austin, and it was during the summer of 2020, and I was very concerned about driving through Austin, but I made sure that I just kept my foot on the gas pedal and didn't make any stops.
Right on. Well, you never have to worry about that with Trump supporters.
No, sir. And I am Trump supporter. I would never riot. I would never put anybody else's life in danger just because somebody disagreed with the way that I agree.
Right. And look, being politically motivated is not inherently wrong, but I want lower taxes, and I don't understand how throwing a brick through a window is going to accomplish that. Thank you very much, Ruth in Corsicana.
Thank you. Bye.
800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. It's Election Day in Texas. Do you think there will be violence? 800-288-9227. Of course, that's if Trump wins. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Sports fans, James Parker here for the Prize Picks app. Now that one weekend of football is finally over, it's time to look at the next weekend. And listen, just spend a little time on the Prize Picks app. You can dig through and you can find some stats that catch your attention. You're like, all I got to do is pick more or less. That looks easy. It is pretty easy. It's so easy. I can actually win some of these lineups. It's been fantastic. They have flex play. So last week when I had a lineup of 4 people, Dak missed. The other 3 actually lived up to my prediction. I still got some money out of it. I didn't lose because, I don't know, they make it easy. The week before, I had that Mason guy for San Francisco go out with an injury, and they just rebooted him. They're like, okay, well, he doesn't count against your lineup anymore. If he goes out in the first half, you don't get tanked. So it's a fun little way to add some spice to a season, and Prize Picks is going to be probably the most enjoyment I get out of the Cowboys season since they're dog water. So download the Prize Picks app, use promo code WBAP. With your first $5 play, I'm going to give you $50 in promo cash that you can turn into some real money. So download Prize Picks, promo code WBAP. Prize Picks, run your game. Right, Dan Bongino. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to Election Day 2024. Decision 2024, as we like to call it in the WBAP newsroom. Well, it's today. In fact, it's almost done. We've got like less than 4.5 hours here in Texas. And if you need a ride to the polls, you hadn't already got it covered, the NAACP has you covered. You can get a discounted ride. Use lift code NAACP Vote 24. So that is valid for 2 rides up to $20, $40 total. They've got you covered. Lift code NAACP Vote 24. But James, I don't politically agree with NAACP. It doesn't matter. Take the free ride. Come on. Help a brother out. And I'm sure they don't mind. They're like, any vote counts. We don't care if it's against us or not. I'm sure they do. All right, my next guest has been keeping up with one of the most important issues here in election 2024, immigration. Renata Castro is back on from a legal immigration firm, USA for All. And, the surveys show that the American people are super interested in this topic and concerned about it as one of the election issues. But it hasn't been in the news very much, Renata. What happened to that?
You think? I think that the real narrative about immigration law has not been in the news enough. As I was sitting here and listening to your show, I was surprised to find out that now undocumented immigrants are being blamed for the high cost of housing. So it's making me wonder if undocumented immigrants are the ones running insurance companies and making housing nearly unaffordable for working class Americans throughout the United States. I think we need a conversation that's based on facts, and that's something that you and your show have allowed me to bring different points of view based on law, and not just blaming undocumented aliens for every single problem the United States has, and most of them because we have quite incompetent governance from both parties. It's about time that we as American people demand more from the people who run our country for us.
Well, I think one of the big reasons why immigration hasn't gotten the attention it's due in the news is because it's an issue that hurt the candidate that the media is sympathetic to.
I think that we also, I don't know about you, but I think that many people are just burned out from hearing the same story with a different spin. High interest, blame it on the immigrants. Low wages, it's the fault of undocumented aliens. And there's really no objective narrative on how to solve the problems of immigration and the attached problem that's being blamed on immigrants. It's just a conversation that's meant to spin news cycles, get people elected or reelected, and not really resolve the issue. I think that as Americans, I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, if you are for or against immigrants, it's about time that we vote for people who honor our intelligence and who give us objective answers based on the law or what they can do to make the law better.
At what point does the legal immigrant get to vote?
Only when they become a U.S. citizen.
They have to go through the naturalization ceremony?
Yes, they do. They have to take a test that has been proven many U.S.-born Americans have failed. So
heck yeah. Please. I have to stand in line behind them at the grocery store. How long does that process usually take, Renata?
It takes, for someone who has a green card, it'll take about 5 years unless they're married to a U.S. citizen, and in that case, they become a citizen within 3 years. For those who have served the United States Armed Forces, they may be in a position to naturalize a lot faster, but let's agree they have earned the right to do so.
What do you think about Joe Rogan and Elon Musk talking about on the recent episode? The concern is that a bunch of immigrants are being moved to swing states in order to turn them blue. Do you even have an opinion on that?
I hope they're not going in Tesla cars because those will catch fire on the way to the swing states.
Funny joke.
I think that this is just, once again, Joe Rogan has very interesting guests, but he is in the business of getting eyeballs and ears connected to his podcast. I think that all these conspiracy theories are meant to distract people on both sides of the voting aisle on what really matters. What is the percentage of people who are voting and who cannot vote? It is so small. And the margin should be zero, just to make it clear. It's not even enough to shift the vote. And a lot of times, these improper, this is something that I think is very important to say. There are very few crimes that will bar a person permanently, forever, from having any immigration benefit in the United States. And one of them is voting without the eligibility to do so. There's no bar, there's no waiver, there's no pardon. There's a very serious consequence to people who do it. So it's not like an undocumented immigrant or even someone with a green card will go and vote for their benefit, because it is very easy, and people get in trouble for merely registering to vote when they're not allowed to. So it's important to hear about that.
Can Elon vote yet? Is he naturalized? I don't think he's a naturalized citizen yet. I don't think he can vote, can he?
I as far as I know, and he's not my client, I don't think he can. And I also wouldn't be surprised if now, with all the animosity that he is, bringing on his political opinion, especially because he has admitted to breaking immigration law because he worked while he had a student visa. So why is it okay for him and not okay for others? There should be consequences for all of us. And for the record, I don't think that going after someone who has notoriety just for the heck of it should be the way to apply law. The law should be applied to all of those to whom it is applicable to, no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you have, because this is what makes the United States a great country, that you will be subject to the law no matter who you are.
All right, this is immigration attorney Renata Castro. You can find her at usaforall.com. Thank you very much, Renata.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now the question comes to you, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. We are now about 4 hours away from the polls closing. Depending on the results, do you expect there to be some civil unrest? 800-288-9227. Your call's next on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Today is Election Day, and this is so cool for all of my people who are politically involved. I don't mean like the regular listener to the show. I mean you people who go out there and this is your jam. Society needs people like you, just like it needs people who are crazy about dogs and cats to go rescue strays or whatever. People who are crazy about the environment to go save the trees. We need people who are just a little more interested in politics than the average bear to go. Someone has to be the poll watchers. Someone has to be the election observers. Someone has to go knock on doors. Someone has to design and print and distribute signs. Someone has to make those T-shirts. Someone has to book the rallies. Someone has to work the rallies. Someone has to work the phone bank. Someone has to make calls. Someone has to accept requests. Someone has to help with voter ID or voter registration drives. And after all that, It all comes down to this. After all that working, the training for the fight, today's fight night, there is no more training. There is no more volunteer hours. There's no more phone calls to be made. There's no more pamphlets or leaflets to hand out. It's election day, baby. 800-288-9227. What do you think is going to happen today? This is Ray in Fort Worth. You're on WBAP. Your thoughts on election day?
Hello. There was somebody that called a little while ago, and the question about just how, if there's going to be riots and stuff. I think regardless of who does end up winning, there will be. However, I do recall.
Wait. You think either way there's going to be there will be riots if Kamala wins?
Yes.
Who would riot?
Trump supporters, and I do see that. On January 6th of 2021, a lot of Trump supporters rallied against the White House, and it was them rioting. It wasn't just Democrats that were rioting.
I know, but did anything catch fire? Did any stores get looted? I mean, they didn't even knock over the velvet ropes in Statuary Hall.
Well, that doesn't necessarily. It still happened.
It did happen, but look, Ray, that's the worst example of or the closest thing we have to a right-wing riot, and that was pretty mild compared to the 4 dozen ones that we saw that whole year in 2020. Nothing caught fire spontaneously. No one got killed except for Ashley Babbitt. No store owner got knocked over and kicked in the head. There weren't any police that were shot at. Dart police getting shot from a parking garage by a BLM supporter. I mean, it's not great. It's not a good look. I wish they were better behaved. But if that's as bad if that's the one and only example you have as a riot, I think the right wing pretty much has it nailed. That's sort of the exception that proves the rule.
Well, but you're making it sound like that what happened on that day wasn't bad. 6 people did die. One of them was shot by a police officer. There were natural causes. There were people that died, and there were also officers who were responding to the attack. There was 174 police officers actually that were injured during it. It's not always just the right people or the people that lean right that are causing mayhem to end up happening.
Okay, so if all the people died, 0 of them were killed by the protesters.
That's not necessarily true either. I don't have specific things to back my.
No, and I can understand why you would think that, because Brian Sicknick is the police officer who died a couple days later. He had just an aneurysm, and so they said that he died from his injuries on January 6th. They even housed his body and had it presented in the rotunda at the Capitol. They made a big deal out of it. The president went down, or the president-elect went down there, and all the TV stations were saying this was a violent and deadly riot. It all turned out to be false. Brian Sicknick died of natural causes. The other people besides Ashley Babbitt died of natural causes. There's a low blood sugar 80-year-old diabetic who died. That's not riot related. And look, again, not to defend the people who did break a window or act bad or hurt or fight with the cops on January 6th, but that's the only example we have, and it's not even that bad. And it's not like it happened in the downtown. You have to be worried about going outside if you're in downtown Dallas or downtown Fort Worth or downtown Ferguson, Missouri, or downtown Minneapolis. I mean, this was a concentrated one spot only, and nothing even caught fire. They didn't even, the only people that died were the protesters themselves. I don't think it's nearly the threat that we see from Antifa and BLM, where we had to take dead bodies out of our downtown a few years ago from a BLM rally that got out of hand. And so the comparison between those two is not fair.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that it's fair. My main point was just it sounded like it just sounded like you were mainly blaming liberals whenever it's not just us.
You're right. I am mainly blaming them, and it is you. It really is. That's
a really insane take to me. I don't know. Anytime I've ever tried to have a conversation with a Republican and actually just sit down and talk to them, bring out statistics, I have my notes pulled up and stuff, I'm ready to just talk about stuff, I always end up getting attacked for my viewpoints, and I don't typically tend to attack the other.
I haven't attacked your viewpoints. I'm just pointing out that all the riots that happen in major metropolitan area downtowns and things get thrown through windows and shoe stores gets looted, that's always from your side.
But that's normally because people end up making it. I will say there are extremes. There are extremes on both sides. And some extremes end up ruining it for the whole entire party. But
we don't have that. We don't have those extremes.
No, because I went to a BLM protest in Dallas, and whenever I was there were Republicans that were like basically yelling at us, booing us, telling us.
Yeah, they were saying mean things. Yeah, that's about as bad as it gets. That's my point.
No, they started throwing stuff at like me.
All right, well, those guys are butt heads. But listen, Ray, I appreciate the civil discussion. I think you're going to come around. I think you keep listening to this show and you keep being as open-minded as you sound. And it's hard to admit that you're on the side that does all the violence and does all the looting and burning down of buildings. You know, that's a tough thing to admit. But you'll get there eventually, and we'll be here with open arms, and you can be one of us soon, Ray. Oh, yes, we will convert you soon. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome to Election Day. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. It's The James Show, and I am your host, James Parker. Welcome back to the big show. All right, your thoughts, your observations are welcome. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. We've been talking about the possibility, the specter of there being some sort of civil unrest based on the results of tonight's election. And we'll continue that. But right now, I have a special guest coming back in, Coley Stimson. Welcome back to the James Show. You know what? You were on, it was like a month ago or so. And I forgot to ask you, you were instrumental. This is just kind of an aside. We'll get back to the topics of the day. You were instrumental in how we handled the detainees from the War on Terror. I think that's the first time you were ever on my radar with all the Gitmo stuff. Whatever happened to Gitmo? Is that still a thing? I haven't even heard that word in like 5 years.
Yeah, I was Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary under Donald Rumsfeld.
Wait, say that again. Deputy.
I was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
ASD, the head policy dude in charge of all the detainees we had in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Gitmo. Most people don't realize in the War on Terror we had over 103,000 detainees, 75,000 or so in Iraq, 25,000 or so in Afghanistan, and 779 at its peak at Gitmo. Today we have none in Iraq, none in Afghanistan, and a couple dozen at Gitmo, including the 9/11 hijackers. It's still open for business, and we have military commissions, which are criminal cases under the law of war against the 9/11 5. We have a case against the guy who bombed the USS Cole called Nashri, a guy that bombed the Bali discotheque.
Oh, the nightclub, yeah, in Bali.
Hambali. The guy's actually name is Hambali. And a couple other really bad dudes.
That's a terrible coincidence, Coley.
Yeah. Bad name choice. I guess he was predestined to do that.
Good Lord.
But these are bad dudes. They hate us, and so it's still open.
All right, and how many are still left there?
A couple dozen.
That's not bad. All right, well, just leave them there. I'm in no hurry to get them to any better accommodations, if ever. All right, let's talk about what's going on. Our main topic here for today has been the concern about civil unrest in the wake of the election results. So what do you think, Coley?
Well, I have no more insights than anyone else, except for the fact that I was an assistant United States attorney here in Washington in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, which handles all of the J6 cases. And you see the city being boarded up, but you don't see the office, and I still have a lot of friends there, gearing up for extra arrests. They're not asking prosecutors to do extra hours tonight or tomorrow. I just don't think there's going to be unrest like there was in the so-called Summer of Love in 2020. And we're certainly not going to see a reprise of J6. So I just don't see it happening. Now, you know, if she wins, our side, Republicans and conservatives, will be disappointed. If he wins, the left will melt down like they did last time when he won in 2016. But I hope to God we don't have any violence, because that's not what we're about on the left or right.
So one of the big issues was immigration. And if that is what people are basing their vote on, you would think that favors Donald Trump. How big of a player do you think immigration will be once the votes are counted?
My guess is that the polls have been right all along, that the top three issues are the economy, inflation, gas, groceries, and rent, immigration and crime, which they're lumped together. And then in some polls, it's abortion, especially for women. So I think immigration is going to play a serious part in it. And also, we had a project here at Heritage in the oversight section of Heritage, and we tracked the cell phones of illegal aliens who came to this country and they were given free cell phones. And we tracked them to every congressional district in the United States except for one. So when they say that, Ohio or Michigan is a border state, they're all border states now because this administration shipped them in the dead of night to every place in this country where they went there with the help of NGOs and government support. So I think immigration is going to play a role in people's voting. But I think the price of everything is going to play a role for people who are motivated by keeping costs down.
Well, I really thought immigration would be a bigger deal. I know why it's not. It doesn't favor the preferred candidate, the platforms I was expecting to cover it. But it's gotten so bad, it's not just about immigration anymore. Now, the wide open border, it's about terrorism. We're letting in terrorists. It's about crime and justice. We're letting in rapists and murderers and Venezuelan gangs. Right. It's also, about homeland security. It's also about drug policy with tainted cocaine and heroin with fentanyl in it. And so it's just gotten so huge that I figured that would be the volcanic issue. But the media didn't seem to think so.
Well, I think normal folks think so. And I think that the internet, and thank God for X, have been a workaround by the mainstream media, because when you see the fact that a Biden administration official in ICE, the acting director, sends a letter to Congress saying there's 13,900 convicted murderers that have come in under their watch, and over 15,000 convicted sex offenders under their watch, and dozens of people on the terrorist watch list. I mean, this is despicable. This is a choice that they made, and I think some voters are going to punish them at the polls for those choices, which are anti-American.
What are y'all doing at Heritage Foundation to get ready for this election? Y'all have like a response team?
Well, of course, we do policy, not politics. We're a 501c3 education institution, but we have brand new TV and radio studios. We've always had older ones, but now we have massive ones. So we're having an election watch party with a lot of Heritage folks and Heritage alums coming. It's an invitation-only party. We have a lot of national media who are renting and using our television and radio studios. So a lot of the experts like me and others here at Heritage are going to be on TV and radio and print starting in about an hour through 1 or 2 in the morning. So we're going to be really busy.
All right. Well, thanks for taking some time to be with WBAP on this history-making night. Coley Stimpson, Heritage Foundation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to continue the discussion. Potential civil unrest. I would like to hear your thoughts on it. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up in 5 minutes, you're going to hear MSNBC that's warning you better look out, because there's going to be civil unrest from those right-wingers. No, seriously, I'll play it for you in 5 minutes. That's coming up next on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Happy Election Day 2024. You worried about political unrest? Listen, man, where I'm from in Bug Tussle, way out in East Texas, where of course we're not worried about political unrest. There's not enough blue constituents to form a riot. We know the right never riots. And so no one's going to be upset. If Trump wins, most of Bug Tussle is going to be happy. If Kamala wins, they're going to be upset, but no one's going to go loot the local Champs sporting goods. It'll be fine. No one's going to throw a brick through a window. But it's fun to hear. Yeah, you heard the couple callers ago, lady calling in, and you know what this is about. She's like, well, I'm worried about violence on both sides. No, you're not. No, you're not. You just have to play that both sides thing because you have a cognitive dissonance in your head because you don't understand. I thought I was on the good team. And this man is pointing out that I'm on the team that always does the violent riots and kicks people in the head and puts people in the hospital and steals loots a Target or a grocery store. There, you can just see him working on it. You can just see him just sort of absorbing new information, having the cognitive dissonance, working it out. 800-288-9227. Keith in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP. What do you think is going to happen?
There's no way that Trump supporters are going to riot. I mean, it's not in our nature. And quite honestly, I believe that's part of the reason that we're in the situation we're in. Conservatives want to be free. They want to be left alone, and they want to let other people live their lives the way they want to. So we go to work while the left goes out and protests and creates big scenes and gets all the media. And we're just not like that. You know, we're true Americans who just want to live our lives the way this country was founded and intended to be. So no, I don't think we're going to see any riots on the right. We never have.
Don't you like hearing, though, did you hear the lefty caller a couple segments ago? Because they can't understand. They're like, wait a second. I thought we were the good guys. Are we the bad guys? Because we're saying that they're the dangerous ones. We're saying they're violent and fascists and Nazis, but he's right. They don't ever go ruin someone's small business. They don't ever go clean out a gas station or a Super Target or a Foot Locker.
Yeah, and I give you props. You handled her pretty good, and I do think you left that situation where she's going to be considering, because the truth is the truth. The biggest problem we have is the media does not spread the truth. They're all biased. And so, but still, even without that, I don't understand why people don't see what's right in front of their eyes.
Well, because it's not right in front of their eyes. People that watch CNN and MSNBC, they don't see the same news. And look, I pick on CNN and MSNBC a lot. If you ever watch newsbusters.org, the website, they show that NBC, CBS, and ABC are just as bad. They just have a thicker veneer on it because they don't have to fill as much time with stuff that's obviously opinion, so they're coming out with straight up news. But the NBC news, the nightly news, the national news, they didn't even report on the jobs report from Friday. Now, it only comes out once a month, and it's sort of standard operating procedure to report on a jobs report. Now, this is the last jobs report we're getting before an election, so it's the most important jobs report we've had in the last 4 years. But you know what? It's also the worst jobs report we've had since December 2020. So since this guy's been president, we just had the worst job growth for any month in the last 4 years. Didn't get reported on by NBC. So when you say people can't see what's right in front of their face, it's not in front of her face. She doesn't have the same information that you and I have.
That's true. That's true. And that's my biggest fear, is that, people don't understand the truth. The truth is being hidden. But I tell all of my friends, and even those that have the opposite viewpoint is, when were you better off? And I've looked back and I've essayed or not essayed, that's
surveyed,
but surveyed. There you go. Thank you. My life and the times in my life that I was the best off, when my life was the best, when I had the most money, when my income increased the most. And I hate to say this, it was all Republican, but except for Clinton. And I hate that. Just rubs me wrong.
Well, listen, Clinton,
a sorry bastard.
That's all right. Listen, Clinton was in office for 8 years. It was only the first 2 years that he had a blue Congress. Other than that, from 94 on, Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took over Congress, and they cut him off at the knees. And he was vetoing those balanced budgets with the surpluses that Newt Gingrich passed. He was threatening to veto the crime bill, the reform that drove crime down for the next 2 decades. He was threatening to veto welfare reform that he turned around praising and taking credit for when his wife was running in 2016. So, yeah, the economy did great under Bill Clinton. When the Republicans came in and started turning around all his policies, that explains that, economically speaking. Anyway, I got to run. I just looked at the time here.
Okay.
Great call.
Take care. Thanks.
Because I wanted to squeeze in this other one, something I'm looking for. MSNBC is saying the opposite of what Keith in Fort Worth just said. Look out for right-wing terror attacks.
Agencies are warning of threats of violence in the upcoming election. In a joint intelligence bulletin, agents from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are warning law enforcement agencies that domestic violent extremists are seeking to terrorize and disrupt the vote.
See, that's why she thinks she's told. She watches MSNBC or CNN or ABC, NBC, CBS. She watches it and they tell her, boy, that right wing, they sure do a lot of horrible terror attacks. They sure do a lot of violence. They sure are dangerous. And so she comes away with the impression, well, it comes from both sides. She knows she's seen all the violence that came from BLM and the Antifa riots and the burning and the looting and the putting people in hospitals and beating up little old people and the cops that were shot in downtown Dallas at the BLM riots. But she turns on MSNBC and they give her the cognitive dissonance excuse of, no, that really happens on both sides. You're on the right team. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. This is The James Show on Election Day. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.